But we're really, really excited to be here today to celebrate the book launch for Dylan West's new book, Scribes Descent. And let me just tell you a little bit about Dylan. I think those of you who are here are probably here because you might know Dylan, but maybe you're not. Maybe you just came because you wanted to get out of the house. So Dylan is a former Navy nuclear operator who now codes web applications and serves two demanding tabby cats. He began writing his first novel, Scribes Descent, as a story for a 2D platforming video game. It's young adult, sci-fi, and faith-based. When he's not writing, he enjoys powerlifting. You should teach me some things about powerlifting. Studying foreign languages, coaching speech and debate, but not all at the same time because he has to make time to write as well. So Dylan's going to read from his new book, and then afterwards, I think he's going to give a demonstration of the video game kind of component of it, and then there'll be some time for questions for Dylan, but also some time to play the game, and then there'll be a raffle, I believe, to have a free copy of this book. And if you don't win the raffle, don't worry, you can buy the book, which is probably even better for the author. So again, thank you so much for being here, and welcome to the Muse Writers Center. And let's give it up for Dylan West.
Just kidding on the video game. I'm just going to do a deadlifting demonstration instead. I might actually do that one day. A big thank you to the whole Muse Writing Center for hosting this, for supporting me, all the classes, all of the social media support. I really appreciate it.
I forgot to mention.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was told that it's not in my head, so we haven't had in-person things in so long. In case of an emergency, there's an exit in the back, an exit in the front, and the restrooms are right over here. And if you need to go, just quietly walk and go to the restroom. And it's a good time to turn your cell phones to shush.
So I have a script, but I won't be reading for it, or at least I hope I'm not. If I start forgetting, I might have to fall back on that. So you may not have ever seen this before, but as a speech and debate coach, I make my students memorize their script and deliver it. So I'm going to attempt to do that tonight, so wish me luck. So this is from Scribes Descent. This is chapter 1 called Test Flight. Mallory huddled in the aft concourse with 12,000 other evacuees. As the spacecraft glided out of the station, they said goodbye to Planet Daishon, where Mallory's whole life had taken place, all 8 years of it. Leaving felt like both betrayal and relief. Her parents squeezed in close, squinting to hold back tears and talking about the new world. But Mallory cocooned herself in numb silence, gazing out the viewport at the dark side of Imna. Orbital rings crisscrossed the sky, crammed with the earliest evacuees, their habitats dotted and dashed the night with red beacons. Mallory ran a finger across the glass to trace the outline of her home continent, remembering. During odd snatches of time, she found herself lingering on photos of recent quake damage. Instead of a cityscape, they showed a vast landfill where everything used to be a piece of something else. Shattered glass blanketed the scene like frozen teardrops. No one knew where one city ended and another began, because the Quakes had stolen the names and shapes of what felt so permanent. According to forecasts, by this time tomorrow, her hometown would be next to fall. Mallory pressed her palms against the window as if to push the ship back toward Imna. With a smile only adult faces could make, Mother stooped beside her. You'll love our new home, and it'll love you. Will it? Daishon will be slung with joy to feel the patter of your feet. Mother pointed 2 fingers to the floor and wiggled them into a walk. Her eyes were tinged with red. Had she been crying too? Mallory wanted to look out the front of the spacecraft for Daishon, but it wouldn't be visible until they passed through the wormhole next week. What would a new planet be like? Would it smell funny? Mother had said to think of this as an adventure, and it would be. Daishon was a whole new world to explore. But she hadn't finished exploring her old one. Father pointed at Imna. Look beyond the orbital habitats to the city lights on the ground. See how they cover the western half? All is not lost. Not yet. Mallory nodded, but couldn't help but notice the darkness shrouding the rest of the land, where quakes had snuffed out power and light. If you look closely, he continued in a whisper, there's a bright red dot on the east coast. With a mental command, Mallory turned on her holovisor in zoom mode. The bulb on her forehead projected a square of sapphire light, showing a closer view of the scene. Liquid fire burbled from a mountain and oozed around a cluster of tall concrete buildings. Lava. Mallory murmured the word in awe. That's right. Father smiled approval as if this were a mere geology lesson. Some structures hadn't fallen yet, poking up from the fire in grim defiance. Dialing up her visor magnification revealed small blue squares of light hovering over the rooftops. Holovisor projections. Many flickered the word help in big red letters. Mallory gasped. People are trapped down there. Father sucked in a sharp breath and stepped in front of the window to block the view, hands raised. Let's look elsewhere, shall we? Without warning, the projection cut off. Mother crossed her arms and leveled a stare at Father. Furrows in her brow swallowed up her visor bulb. Where'd my picture go? Mother looked down, smiling through tears, her voice husky. That's not for 8-year-olds to watch. They need help. We have to go back. I'm sorry, but we can't. Someone else will rescue them. Little Moon. 10 years later, Mallory bisected a holographic sphere with a chop of the hand. Then, with deft fingers, she poked 12 holes into each piece. This would have been as satisfying as popping bubble wrap if the modeling software had provided popping sounds. And a traditional user interface made manual gestures unnecessary, but where was the fun in that? She selected a white composite and sent the model file to the printer. The hum of vent fans and the whir of stepper motors blended into a sound she'd come to think of as her personal theme song. At the moment, it provided background music for the plea she muttered to whatever god might be listening. Please, let the drone keep a steady course this time. Father's workshop used to be a haven from society. Its wooden planks and paneling made the place feel more like a cabin than a lab. But now, it was a testing ground for her engineering mettle. This drone would fly in the biggest contest of her life. Competition wasn't new. Robotics medals covered the walls. Trophies and their associated bots lay enshrined in a glass case beside the chem locker. But all those contests were mere qualifiers for this one. The model printer chugged away, building layer upon layer. When the printing stopped and the cool-down period ended, Leah clasped her hands under her chin. Look how little the new stabilizers are. Her eyes were made for easy smiles. Mallory plucked the drone halves from the printer with tweezers and transferred them to a microscope base. While peering through the eyepieces, she guided tiny robotic grippers to snap the homemade rotors, thrusters, and cameras into place. Into the hollow center, she installed a battery, gyros, inertial and LiDAR sensor suites, and a control board. Solder bots wired everything together, filling the air with the sweet tang of burned rosin. Mallory stepped aside to allow her friend a final check. Leah nodded, snapped the housing shut, and sealed it with visor glue, the same stuff used to mount a holovisor base to the skin of the forehead. Model number 11 was complete. They named it the Tickle Monster, after a bobblenut raft in their favorite show. Newest software is installed? Mallory asked. We have placed the drone into a padded case. So new you can smell it. She gave an appreciative sniff. Can't wait to see Tickle in action. Today is windy enough to put flight control through its paces. Indeed, her long hair tentacled out behind her when she opened the front door. As Mallory slipped the drone case into the pocket of her black gentle slacks, the same fabric the Daishon natives wore, she stepped out into the cool backyard. Leah skipped ahead with an air of excitement, but Mallory couldn't help but harbor a niggling worry that something about this new design was off. They crossed the lawn and weaved their way through a strip of alpine review trees, crunching fallen spinner seeds underfoot, and stopped in a clearing they called the picnic field. This was their favorite place. It overlooked the foothills of the Fassi Mountains and their blue-flowered trees. Leah liked to say that tropical waters had climbed onto land and hung themselves as holiday ornaments. Not that tropical waters were found here in northern Mcclessia. By mag train, they were only 3 hours from the Arctic wilderness of Versailles, where their mini-drone would fly in a contest of exploration. Versailles spy, probing the forbidden continent. All who dared explore that snowy land died in a flash of crackling light. Animals sent in with cameras were slaughtered by bright and blurry objects. Dense clouds loomed over the treetops, blanketing the entire landmass. They blocked aerial photography and somehow brought down aircraft. Live video feeds showed armored rovers careen into covered pits. Now, only drones went in. Every last one was lost, however, shot down by hazy glowing spots in the clouds. Let's see how far Tickle makes it this time, Leah said. The longest flight across Versailles was 30 kilometers in from the coast. Any team who broke that record this year would win acceptance to the Daishon Research Facility, where the best scientists invented the latest tech. When Mallory had asked Mother why the facility cared about this contest, she said, Versailles Spy separates those who solve hard problems from those who merely have knowledge. Creative thinkers are an endangered people group, I'm afraid. Her answer made sense, but was Mallory creative enough? She gazed across the grassy field, picturing it as an icy wasteland. Though this were a test flight, Mallory's excitement mingled with Leah's. Actually, let me back up. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's see. Oh, right. It shouldn't matter how far a drone travels as long as we find something new. I'd rather just document a new animal species than wander over empty tundra. Let's win first, then make our big discoveries at the facility, Leah said. If we win, this could all be for nothing if we can't keep a stable flight path. Mallory swatted the thought away, unwilling to let it cripple her confidence. No, this has to work. We can't get in the normal way. Applicants with 2 degrees and 10 years of experience are getting rejected. But if Eleni got picked up as a robotics intern, her father donated $1 billion nickels. Leah shook her head. Students aren't buying their way in. No, but their parents hide donations for them in shell corporations. Have you seen Eleni's portfolio? We made better banana bots as 9-year-olds. Well, her father does own the Mithril orbital habitat. Mallory threw up a hand. There you go. They say every time a hab airlock opens, money flows into the owner's pockets. She realized her voice had risen to a shout. Sorry, I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at the system. But do we need the system? If building magma drones is our real goal, we can do that on our own, without the facility. No, we can't. We need their planetary simulators, and their heat-resistant alloys. For all the technological bluster of their world, nobody could create a drone able to dive down a volcano to the liquid mantle. Ground imaging couldn't see through the crust to the forces driving IMNA's ever-worsening quakes. But a drone under the tectonic plates would map convection currents in far more detail than any seismometer network. Armed with those data, Mallory might help restore IMNA's seismic activity to safe levels. A long shot to be sure. Actually, magma drones were the first step in saving her birth world, and the extended family who lived on it. A long shot, to be sure, but she had to try. Mother's words still rang in her ears. Somebody else will rescue them, little moon. Problem was, nobody had rescued the people in that lava-filled city. Mallory had checked. In her dreams, she could see Grandpa Spinner and her other relatives trapped on that building, waving their arms and shouting. But in real life, the Quakes still hadn't made it to their coast. There's just no easy way to propel machines through hot, sludgy rock, Leah pointed out. Mallory pulled the drone case from her pocket and nodded. Not yet. Give us another century or two, and we'll figure it out. Of course, they didn't have that long. The latest forecast gave Grandpa Spinner's area another month to evacuate. No matter what happened to her family, Mallory wouldn't let Imna stay broken for good. Not if she could help it. Mallory relaxed her shoulders and zoomed in on the first of 10 croquet wickets left out from the previous trial. With mental commands, she placed a virtual waypoint in the middle of a thin metal loop, pushed flight coordinates to the flight controller, and did the same for the other wickets. In a deep voice, she quoted their favorite show. "The time has come to confront Cast." Leah cracked a smile. With a steadying breath, Mallory opened the drone case and signaled the tickle monster to take wing. 6 video feeds flickered onto the projection, showing the drone's surroundings. In the actual contest, the grass would be crusted in ice, and wind would flap the trees around. Let's see. So this was only a test run. Mallory's excitement mingled with Leah's as their creation zipped off to the first wicket. At 3 millimeters wide, the drone was hard to spot with the unaided eye. Its white casing would blend in with deer-sized snowy terrain, with a thermal signature dimmer than that of small birds and rotors that made less than a decibel of noise. It should slip right past whatever bizarre predators had destroyed the other drones. Most contestants opted for a larger design because a gust of wind could toss a light craft against a tree. Even today's breeze made Mallory set a low flight path where grass offered some shelter. Leah glanced between video feeds. Not enough landscape footage. Lift up for better photogrammetry. Thought we weren't worried about that. Mallory brought the drone a half-meter higher. There. That'll have to do. Don't want to get zapped when we do this for real. Battery size was another problem for small drones. It took a surprising amount of power to keep the rotors spinning, the nav systems running, and the cameras beaming back live video signals. Mallory pulled a chem nap from her pocket and wiped the sweat from her hands. Please, let the battery last. So many engineering problems to solve. Maybe Mother was right. All the money she'd spent on this project could have paid for her first semester of college. Then again, Mother never did like her interest in robotics or in hardware, hoping to sway her over to the coding side of robotics. But something about the very sight of code made Mallory's eyes hurt. She clenched a chemnap in a shaking fist. No, they would make this work. Their drone would crack Virsai open like a Gorazin shell. Future drones would be modeled after the Tickle Monster. 3 wickets in, and we haven't blown off course even once. Leah pumped a fist. Mallory let some of her worry melt away. Your stability fixes worked. This would be the model that landed them a spot as geology interns. She could almost smell the crisp white lab coat and gray name tag. Halfway across through the wickets, and the video feeds were still clearer than those of prior flights. But half the power was already gone. Odd. It hadn't flown that long. 2 wickets later, and power plunged to 10%. Tickle sank into the grass, and Mallory cringed. As the video feeds blanked out, she raced over to find the drone before the battery died. Leah sucked in a sharp breath and cupped a hand over her mouth. Really? A low growl climbed up Mallory's throat. 5 kilometers. Only a sixth of the distance we need. Without Veerside's fierce winds and unseen predators, Tickle had failed. She ran trembling fingers through her long auburn hair. Solve one problem and create another. Too bad we have to explore with drones anyway. We should go there in person. And get zapped? Leah said. So we wear conductive suits. We'd be fine. Mallory closed her eyes and saw herself there in Veerside. For the barest moment, she felt the crunch of snow underfoot, watched the glowing spots gather. Their light lured her close, welcoming her. But then the world flashed to white. Her eyes flew open. Huh. Who am I kidding? I'm no rugged explorer, unless you count exploring libraries. Mallory and Leah returned to the workshop, where Father, Mallory's father, was elbows deep in an ultra-filtered glove box. He pulled his hands out of the glove ports and turned, brows raised. So, how'd it go? Mallory slumped over the main work table with a sigh. She brushed aside the design sketches and set the drone case on the bare wood surface. Tickle was perfect in almost every way. But the new stability thruster sucked the juice out of it, didn't they? Father hopped on a stool and squinted at the next-sized object. You need a more efficient battery, or scale up the design and find other ways to achieve stealth. He reached across the table to pat her hand. Whatever you decide, I'm sure you'll make it work. Mallory fidgeted with the drone case, as if to coax some secret from it. How do I keep you aloft, By tickling you? She set it down and got up to stretch. Father came around the table, his face suppressing a grin. Let's test your theory. He poked her in the side, making her leap back. He chuckled. You went airborne, so you might be onto something. Mallory returned with a poke of her own, looking at Leah for support. Leah raised her hand. Not this time. Take a break, Mal, Father said. Go exercise. Lift some weights like Grandpa Spencer does. Come back fresh. Ha! Mallory scoffed. The heaviest thing I'll ever lift is a stack of paper books. Are you sure? You never know when you'll need to be strong. Father flexed a bicep. We pick some moments, and some moments pick us, Mallory finished for him, wondering what moments he might be thinking of. Strength wouldn't solve any of her problems, just brilliance. In the silence that followed, the floor wobbled. Microscopes and boxes rattled on countertops. The drone case vibrated to the edge of the table. Mallory caught it right before it dropped. Thanks the city beyond. Father rushed to the window, peering out. What in corruption was that? Mallory darted glances around the room, seeking an explanation. Father rushed into the house through an adjoining door, and Mallory followed him to the kitchen where Mother was scanning a news site on her holovisor. Mother tapped a holographic page with a finger. Site excavation gave the area a wallop. Too many explosives. Mallory scanned the text for more details. The work's happening in Curse District? She crossed her arms. But that's clear on the opposite side of Feldencourt. We wouldn't feel demolition charges from that far away. She didn't dare say what she thought it was. What it couldn't be. This wasn't imminent after all. Quakes didn't happen here on Planet Daishon. Ever. I think we are going to, before we do the Q&A, I want to show off the thing that caused me to write this book in the first place. Can someone get just the front row lights? And I will turn this monitor back on.
The monster is here.
Oh.
So aim at that.
Oh. You mean that's not going to...
Yeah, it's turn it on.
And actually, instead of me showing off this game, I would like a volunteer. Someone who's not afraid of video games.
Here. You go, Rob.
Yep.
Rob.
Awesome. Now, you don't have to sit. You can stand if you want. Let me start the game. Let me move this over here a little bit. Everybody can see that, right?
Yes.
I'll be here in case you need some help. You charge extra for this. Okay, so he's figuring out the controls. There's a little placard to your right with the control instructions if you need it. And to speak, you press up on the analog stick, the left one. Sorry, I don't have any voice acting in there. Maybe one day. And most of this dialogue in the game comes directly from the book, with a few mods. All right, go back to the right, and you'll find a sword there, or a knife. Now if you press, I think it's the yellow button, you can swing the knife. One of those buttons. There you go. And you can also double jump if you press the jump button twice. I think it's the blue button. I think it's the bottom one. Whatever color. There you go. So if you jump up in air and press the jump button again, you'll jump again. And you can even dash in midair too. So what you're seeing here, this is the video game that I had started off making in 3 dimensions 11 years ago. But it was going to be too big of a project because working in 3D, you really kind of have to have a decent sized team. So I rebuilt the game from scratch in 2 dimensions about 2 years ago. And I did it all by myself. I did all the art, all the coding, all the design, and here's why. Because when I was trying to bring a bunch of indie developers together, it was like herding cats, especially when you're not paying them, when everybody's doing sweat equity. So I just decided to do everything by myself here. So I saved my recruiting time and just poured into this. And after the Q&A, anyone who wants to come up and try the game, I'll have it up here and available for you to play until Michael kicks us out. So. And the music, all right, so I should explain. This, I did not compose or perform this music. This came from a game called Hollow Knight, and it's composed and performed by a guy named Christopher Larkin. It's wonderful music and a even better game. You should go out and play the game. But I just wanted to make you aware that this is not my music. It's placeholder.
You should just pick up this little thing from the ground.
Yeah, those are coins, and they're called nickels. And that's actually what the currency is called in the book, too. I tried to make this as faithful as I could to the book. So if you keep going to the right, you're going to find, and keep going. All right, so now you finally know where you are. See that little tombstone-looking thing? If you walk up to it and press up on a stick, there you go. And now you can go, that's the barrier door, for those of you who have already read the book. So if you just jump down that hole, probably not the smartest thing you could do, not a good life choice, but for the sake of demonstration. There you go. So great, now you're in a pit of monsters, just so you know. So if you just keep going down, oh, that's the way back up. That's safe. Don't go back up there. The point of the video game is not to be safe. Yeah, just keep going.
Safe is a four-letter word.
Oh, it is. Okay, keep going. Oh, and I got to warn you, when you get farther down this bioprison shaft, you'll be able to pick up an item that lets you do a ledge grab. I don't know if you'll find it or not, but if you do the ledge grab on certain corners, you'll actually get stuck into the level geometry. But there's sometimes you can jump up a wall and grab another corner from inside and climb out. So it's, when I showed this off at the Iconicon at the North Suffolk Library in April, kids were having a blast for 2 reasons. One, they were enjoying the game and falling into a pit of spikes. That's always fun. But the other thing is they like to find all the bugs. One guy figured out how to paint a part of the sky with Mallory's head. It kept, the image kept buffering. See, it's like a stencil. I took a picture of it. So I got free game testing. And so when you fall in the pit, you start back at the last checkpoint. And I see that he's figured out how to steer those rock bugs by pressing the left and right button. So instead of walking, you force the rock bug to steer. So yeah, every piece of art you see, I painted it. All the animations, I did them so if they're really janky looking, that you can blame the animator. I would say it's probably at about 80% polish, And those gray, 5 gray cube-looking things at the top left, those are med nanos. So as you lose health, you lose some of your med nanos, just like in the book. And then the red squares are food, and what happens is if you lose life, the food, after a delay, will replenish some of your life. Just like in the book where you eat and that restores and makes repairs to your med nanos. Oh, I'm trolling you here. You would think there's like a power-up at the end of this tunnel? No, I was too lazy to put it in. I had to apologize to all the kids playing this game. They're like, what? No prize? So, now, there is a boss at the end of this level, but he just kind of does this. He doesn't attack you and you can't hurt him. The kids are having fun pushing him across the screen. It's like, well, I didn't realize you could do that. So, well, yeah, all sorts of crazy stuff. Wait, okay. I think that's a camera glitch. Anyways, I think that's basically the gist of, when you play the demo for yourself, you can explore more.
Cool.
Thanks. So, what I think what I'll do, and here, I'll take the controller and roll. So we're not all distracted during Q&A. I will turn that off for now. And when you guys are done blasting me with questions, then we can go back. Oh, actually, before we're done,
don't forget the mic is on that.
Yeah.
Don't move it too far away.
Yep, right on. We've got a raffle. I don't want to forget about this. Where if you pay $1, you get a ticket. You pay more dollars, you get more tickets in the basket. Whoever wins goes home with a free hardcover. All the money that we collect from that raffle goes directly to the Muse as a donation. So I'm going to just set this over here for now. We'll do that a little later. All right. Guess we can leave the lights off so when they play the game, they can.
I can just make them up a little bit.
Oh. Or for that.
Who has a question for Dylan?
Hi.
Hi. What made you decide to write this as YA instead of as an adult novel?
Okay, that's a good question. There is a financial reason and there's a non-financial reason. The financial reason is I'm told that there are sales of books to children and teens, and then there are sales to adults. And that unless your name is Stephen King or Brandon Sanderson, if you market your books towards adults, you automatically get a pretty small percentage of the overall book market. So I thought, okay, well, J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter, why did she become so rich? Well, one of the reasons is she had the lion's share of the market just by selling to kids. So now that's my financial reason. The other reason is that I'm a homeschooling dad. And I had the problem of finding science fiction for my daughter, who at the time was 11, and she's really smart. I don't say that just because I'm her dad. She's really smart. And so I wanted to give her a science fiction book that would challenge her, but wouldn't come with all sorts of other adult content. We read The Martian together, and yeah, there was some cussing in it, but at least it didn't have, a lot of stuff other books did, have too. So I thought, a lot of my fellow homeschooling parents, they want something for their kids. So, by the way, that's the majority of my target audience is homeschooled families. That and just super geeky nerds like me, who just love science. So that's a great question. Did I answer it? Anybody else?
What are the pitfalls of writing a young adult novel?
Okay, so when you submit this, when you query to an agent, they're going to say things like, well, the protagonist has to be between the ages of 13 and 18. If you make them like 19 or 20, now you have to go to new adult, I think is what they call it, or straight up adult fiction. The other thing is it kind of lowers your total word count. If you're going to traditionally publish, right? Like for me, I'm self-publishing, so I am the gatekeeper. Go me, right? But if you're going to go querying an agent for an adult science fiction, they're going to say, oh yeah, you can have 110, maybe 120,000 words for your debut novel. Nobody knows you, so you can't write this huge tome, right? But when you do young adult, you can't go with a science fiction novel that's 120K words. They're going to spit you out into their slush pile. It really has to then go to about 70 to 100K. I think Hunger Games was right at about 100K, and she was, Collins was kind of right there at the edge. But it was so good, the agent was like, it's okay that it's 100K.
How many words did you end up with?
Oh, good question. So originally, this book was 130,000 words, and I was like, shoot, even if I self-publish this, that's going to be expensive to print all those pages, right? So I made this, I spent 3 solid years agonizing over how to solve that problem. I mean, I could do certain word slimming, and taking chapters and saying, yoink, let's put that in book 2. Things like that. But when I did all that, it was still too big. And I was like, well, I took the 75% point and I just went, you're book 2. Which meant that the original climax for Scribes Descent is now in Scribes Ablaze, or Aflame. I haven't really decided which fire word to put in there. So some readers have been kind of complaining like, oh, this ends on a little bit of a cliffhanger. It's not really a cliffhanger, but it does feel like there's some loose ends that, got left dangling. That's kind of because I didn't want to wallop you with 130K.
So what's the final word count?
102K. So it's, it's still a little hefty. So, excellent.
It was obvious to me early in that I was reading the novel of a fellow engineer. So, tell us a little bit more about your science and engineering background and how it influences your work.
Awesome. So, I spent, like Michael said earlier, 8 years as a nuclear operator, which basically means you're going through one technical interview after another. You've got to memorize how to draw all these different piping systems in the nuclear plant. Hey, draw the primary coolant system from memory. Label all the valves. Tell me how a check valve here works and how a gate valve here works. And you just have to regurgitate all this stuff, right, from memory. When it came time to do the science for my book, I did get to reach into that engineering tool bag and just pull out stuff that I remembered from nuclear power school. And I just studied a bunch of science just because I'm a science knowledge pack rat. If you poke me too hard, some equations and some chemical formulas will probably come shooting out. So wear a face mask. Did I answer that sufficiently?
Yes, for now.
For now, okay, all right.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
From your video game 11 years ago, what was the transition that you found for going to the book, and was the story changed?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked. So it started off as 30,000 words, and it had things like, in square brackets, player takes control and fights through a hallway of monsters, and then you would get the rest of the story, and then you'd get another player control thing. I had to go in and rip all those player control things out and write it as active scene. And that instantly ballooned the word count at least double. Yeah. And there were some things in the original story that felt very video gamey. Even to me, I was like, yikes. That's not going to fly in the novel. I had to yank that stuff completely out. So, and then replace it with stuff that was never in the original video game. Stuff that probably would have been boring in the video. In fact, what you just saw here, There's some things in here I'm having to put into the game to make it fun as a game that are not in the book. So just kind of the nature of it.
Cool.
What's your writing process like when you wrote this book? Did you have a dedicated time every day you worked on it, or did you play the game, get ideas, go to how did you structure it?
Okay, so, well, my first draft, I spent a total of like 2 months just plowing through those 30,000 words. And I started with an outline. Actually, I did kind of like split testing. I went to my wife with these 2 different ideas for the concept of the game. Which one do you like better? And she picked this one. And it used to be called Monster Pit. At some point, I realized, like, nah, I can't. That name is not good. I think of something different. But as far as process, so writing the first draft, that was actually pretty easy. It just went fast. But then I looked at the hot mess that it was and had to spend years and years rewriting. That first, what I just performed for you, I rewrote that, I wish this was an exaggeration, over 100 times. Seriously. But not in the incarnation that you saw it. Like, I started at different parts of the story and made that the first chapter, and I kept backing up. Because readers were complaining that, like, when a certain bad event happens, I don't want to spoil too much, but when this really bad event happens a few chapters later, people were like, I don't feel sad. I'm not invested in these characters. I'm like, oh, yeah. So I have to back up and show that, right? So some people start too early. My problem was I was starting too late, and I had to keep backing up.
Cool. We have time for one more question before we get to the raffle and book signing.
And if you have more questions after we're all done, I'm going to hang around and lurk. So if you want to help me with more questions, I'll be here for that. Yeah.
What makes this a faith-based novel?
Oh, excellent question. So you probably picked up a few little hints, even in what I performed, where she, muttered a plea to whatever God might be listening. That kind of sets the stage for Mallory's journey of faith, where she's looking at these things happening in her world and in her own life, and she's asking, like, this protectorism, this religion that's a pretty close analog to Christianity, she's kind of looking at it and saying, there seems to be something here, but I just don't know that it's something I can really trust. I can really hang my entire life on this one thing. But I'm going to take time and actually investigate it. And then she gets swept away in the bioprison, and then she finds time to investigate that faith system because it makes her explore it. I'll just put it that way. That's a great question. Yeah.
Cool. Well, awesome. Let's run the
Oh, and actually, while everybody's captive, I should have put it up here, but the next thing that I'm publishing hopefully will be this August, and it's going to be the first episode of a novella called Emulsipation. And this is, I know you can't see it from the back, but I already have the art for the cover painted, and I'm going to do the official cover reveal in a few months anyways. But that will hit Amazon next. And then after that, then I'll go back into book 2 and just overhaul it and have them break out the bulldozers for that one.